We're talking about Electric Malady, nominated at the BAFTAs. It's a documentary from Sweden. It's from filmmaker Marie Lidén. Look who's here, Sean and Matt. We are Boys on Film. My name's Phil.
So this documentary is about a young, I guess he's not young, he's young in the flashbacks, but currently he's probably 40-year-old man who lives in Sweden in a small town or maybe rural area. And he lives out close to his parents. He has an affliction where he's claims to be super sensitive to electricity and electrical pulses, usually from cell tower communication and that kind of like modern radio waves or microwaves or however you want to describe it. It's so debilitating that he can't leave his house. And he, not only that, but he's covered in a, how do you say, a cloak or like a mask of cotton weaved with copper fibers that somehow protect him from the electrical currents. And he's lived there, I think, for 10 years or something.
Yeah. I think he was, he must have been 30 because you see him celebrating his 40th birthday in this.
The doc is about discovering how this happened and what happened to his life because of it and how he can't, for the most part, seem to move past this physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever, everything. He's really trapped in this world. And that's kind of what the setup is for the documentary.
I don't know about you guys, but through watching this, I just kept thinking to myself, how the hell would I cope if that was me? Because he's quite a positive person, I think. He's quite optimistic. I think you'd have to be in that situation because he obviously doesn't go out. He doesn't get on with his life like we would. And I think he still has a lot of things that he wants to do in his life. And I think I just could not imagine being in that situation. I don't think I'd be able to cope with it. And he seems somehow to cope with it, even though obviously, as you would imagine, he has dark periods where, you know, he obviously goes into detail about how he's feeling then. But I think overall, my God, amazing. I just could not imagine being in that situation.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one with William. His name, right? William, the character, because what you kind of get, I think the sadness not only comes from the fact he's in that like massive chandelier duvet thing that he has to wear every day, and and he kind of has these moments of relief where he puts on a CD and dances around. And he's kind of like the small joys he really picks up on. But I think there's that sadness of his reality. Then there's kind of the sadness of the fact that he used to be this really outgoing social person. And the electrosensitivity has kind of made his world shrink down to this kind of like Faraday cage that he now lives in to try and that's where he's at. And he seems, I just say, he's quite sanguine. He's kind of okay with his life in a way, even though it's kind of like, as an outsider looking in, it just seems very bleak. He's kind of found a way to acknowledge his condition and to try and work through it.
So they say it's between 1.5% and 3% of people worldwide that have this condition. And I think what this documentary does is it does enlighten people about the condition, and I would imagine that not many people have heard of this because it's obviously so rare. But that's still staggeringly high when you think about it. When you think about, is there anybody in your lives that have mentioned this condition or that have it? It's crazy.
Well, interestingly enough, there was a friend of mine who used to wear this chain around his neck, because he was sensitive to electro frequencies and wireless, but it wasn't to that extent. But he wore something that was like a blocker that he wore around his neck. But he was still very social and still very out. But whenever you'd ask, he'd go, "This is this thing, right?" I guess will it become more prevalent as things become more wireless? Because that's what basically he was saying. As things went from 3G to 4G to 5G, and suddenly the power of all of these wireless signals are everywhere, that's where the impact has come. And so I don't know whether it will become more prevalent. It's interesting that You know, he talks to that doctor about other people with electrosensitivity and who they are and what they're up to and what they're doing. So clearly in that part of the world, I'm not saying it's like common, but there are other people suffering from this condition. It did make me think in a totally parallel world of Safe by Todd Haynes. You know, the film
Yeah, I
with
thought about that. Yeah.
Which is not about electrosensitivity, but, you know, she has a condition where gradually she withdraws from society because basically modern life, she's almost like allergic to modern life, and she kind of like withdraws from it. And it did make me think of those parallels with that Todd Haynes film, which is from the 90s, I think, right? So yeah, I thought it was very powerful as a movie, and, you know, there's little glimmers of hope. I mean, again, do you want to put the word spoiler across the screen, Phil?
Yeah, it's up there.
Like, even when he gets, like, you know, he gets the wired telephone and he can speak to people, is such a huge moment for him, because he's suddenly like, I can speak to you, I'm connected to you. It's actually really, really powerful. So it's like, you know, his world's got so small that even these small moments in time, like getting a wired telephone, feel huge and feel like he's empowered again. And I think there's something warm about that. There's a sense of positivity about it in what is quite a bleak story, but underpinned by this guy's optimism, really, which is, you know, I find amazing.
And thank God for that lightness as well, because there are moments where the alarm bells are ringing, because you're just thinking more people are allergic to life in general now than they were. You know, they've got more conditions than they had before, and technology, the way that it's improving and increasing, it's like, you know, you can imagine why this is happening, because the world today is, you know, it's a much more allergic place to live, I think. But it does feel very bleak at times, but there is brightness there. There are happy moments, and obviously with the family as well. You know, the parents, I think, are really strong.
On the other side of the, not argument, because I don't have an argument, but I was wondering when I was watching the film that I was wondering why the family or William himself, not from being resigned, but him trying to, I felt like I didn't feel a strong pull from him to try and figure out more about this disease or get more input from other doctors or other experts or try and connect with other people. He seemed pretty resigned to just being like, well, this is it's going to be like forever. So, because he sees a therapist once, maybe later in the doc, and she kind of doesn't seem very effective. She's kind of like seems to come by once every blue moon and be like, so how you feeling? Great. Okay, see ya.
And isn't she quite negative about his mental state as well? She's saying that he should be more troubled than he is, because he touches on his background, his childhood, and he says it's a happy childhood, and she's kind of like wanting him to, I don't know, just like shed more trauma on the story and kind of like to be a bit more specific about it. But he's kind of saying, well, I didn't have any problems as a kid.
And there was something interesting in the backstory. He said that the first time he discovered this happening to him, that his girlfriend at the time had the same condition, and it wanted the filmmaker to track her down and be like, because he said that she had the condition, then he had it right after, then she didn't have it and left him and carried out, like got married to someone else and had kids and apparently never had it again. So how did she escape it and he didn't? I thought that'd be a really interesting story.
Yeah, there were definitely unanswered questions, I think, because I thought that, because I was hoping they would analyse the condition more, but they didn't really. You're right, because there were so many questions that just weren't touched on.
But I think that skepticism from the therapist, that probing, is, I believe she thinks it's psychosomatic. So I think she's like, this isn't real. This is a fictitious thing you've got, and there's something that's happened in your past that has triggered this, and the outcome is this belief that you have this electrosensitivity. I think that's where she's at, and we don't know the backstory of their therapy sessions or the 8 years or whatever he's been under the Faraday cage, but I got a sense that she was that she was cynical or skeptical about his condition and genuinely believed there was something else.
Yeah. Because, I mean, but I just kept thinking, what would you be under that blanket for 10 years on your own when you're an outgoing person? You just wouldn't be, would you? You would, you know, if it wasn't a serious and real condition, surely you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't put yourself through that. Unless
you've been alone for so long that you kind of start believing your own situation, and it kind of sends you into a spiral of you feel like you're getting worse and worse because there's nothing counteracting that belief system. It's just him being like, yeah, this is just getting worse. Nothing can change it. And he's not getting a counteracting kind of viewpoint that's like, well, try this or try that, or let's get someone in to help this. It's just he gets caught up in his own world, and there's no real escape from that until he kind of like tries to break free.
But even everyday tasks, even simple everyday tasks like cooking, are a nightmare for him, because he was talking about leaning over the stove and obviously using a gas stove, and potentially he could go up in flames.
I have a question. I know that because it's a documentary and it's being filmed, that's a different experience than his day-to-day life when there's no camera on him. So if he's by himself in the cabin and there's no one there but him, and he's protected his house with certain like insulation or whatever he does in his house, why does he need to wear the hood when he's by himself alone in the cabin? Like, I don't understand that situation. You know what I mean? Like, maybe if he went out into the nearest small town, I could see him being like, I need to be protected. But if you're in your house and you don't have a computer or a cell phone, and there's no one, it looks like he lives in the forest, why does he need to be fully covered 24/7? I don't really understand that.
My understanding is that he's wearing that kind of like hood because no matter what he does to his home, the way he can still sense and feel the waves. So, you know, his father, it starts with his father going, we built basically that Faraday cage in a basement where we were like, he can just sit in here all day, which is almost like torture, you know? So like, I don't know. It's an interesting one. I think it's not my place to question whether or not this condition is real. I can only comment on how the documentary is put together, which I thought was really well done. And I think it draws light and attention to something that I wasn't really aware of, or to the extent of before, but now I am. And that's the power of documentary, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a fascinating watch. It is quite a bleak watch.
I just need to call something out. Ariana DeBose at the BAFTAs basically said this film was a sleigh.
Yeah. You could sashay.
And I know I have been laughing now for 9 days solid about Angela Bassett did the thing, and it still makes me want to laugh because it's too much. But equally stupid is Electric Malady, what a sleigh, because it is a gentle, bleak movie about electrosensitivity. I'm not like, yes, what a sleigh.
It's slightly shoehorned, isn't it? Shoehorned into that song performance.
John, did Swedish William do the thing?
Swedish William did the thing. Viola Davis, my woman king. So, like, honestly, I know it is absolutely one of the most ridiculous moments in modern TV history, the Ariana DeBose. I do love every moment of it. And I will say this, if you are watching this, which you're not, Ariana, but if you are watching it, come back onto Twitter. The gays love you. You will be an icon forever. So, but yeah, I do think it's a sleigh is a bit of a reach when you think about this movie.
Pass the popcorn. I can't wait for this to go on Twitter. So, Electric Malady, let's go for the verdict. Matt, star rating, please.
I give it a 3. I liked it. I wish it would have delved even further into the questions I mentioned before about the cause and the background and the potential help he could get. I thought that could have pushed, or more background about what the disease is from like a doctor, or just like maybe a bigger world view of what this is. as opposed to just his tiny little story, which is a great story. It just, I wanted more. I wanted to understand his world more than just his immediate house. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was good. I gave it a 3.
It's a strong 3 for me. I thought it was fascinating. It opened my mind a bit, and yeah, I found it quite bleak. I mean, I do bleak, but I just felt for him and his family as well, because his family so strong. But it's tough. It's a tough situation.
It's like between like a strong 3 and a weak 4.
Well, a strong 3 sounds better, doesn't it?
So it's a strong 3. What a sleigh!
Thank you guys, as always. Have you seen Electric Malady? If you have, drop a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe. We are back for more soon. Thank you guys. See you on the next one.